Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Great set of talks before, and always awesome to speak after Davide with PinAI. It's very related. All right, I'll dive right in. That's probably not news for you. The happy path is probably also even unhappier than this, but the point I'm trying to make is that there's sort of two categories which really make crypto hard for the average user. And I don't mean the users in this room, because by being in this room, we're probably already sort of quite advanced, although we definitely suffer from the happy path. There's also this whole category of issues which prevents users from using crypto, because there's a tremendous amount of assumed context, like even the words we're using, complex concepts like that of a DEX, which we throw around this term all the time, but your average user from the street will have no idea what that even means. Then there's multiple chains, and it's just painfully hard to even keep up if you're in the industry, right? So if this industry is meant to really one day touch everyone, then things will have to fundamentally change. And that doesn't involve just slamming on a slightly better UI. It really has to change quite a lot. And a different way to think about this is about the sort of three big trends which we're seeing across technology when it comes to sort of the web and AI and UX. So what we all know is the sort of evolution of the web through these three phases. Web3 brings you this ability to own your data, own your algorithms, own your assets. AI also has, if you want to shoehorn it, like three phases. So it started with rules-based. So basically, developers would write very complex rules, and then there were the first chatbots which were entirely rules-based. Then at some point, people figured out, okay, rather than writing all the rules, we can have the programs learn the rules. So we give them a bunch of data, we write some rules to learn from that data, and then we have like new rules. And that's what basically led to, in the latest incarnation, large language models and all the great generative AI technologies which we're all somehow alluding to today, implicitly or explicitly throughout the day. But there's a new push to an even higher level of intelligence, artificial intelligence, which is that of agentic nature, right? So if you look at the latest releases from OpenAI as well, who are probably still the leader, then you can see that increasingly what used to be just models which you interact with once, they're now becoming agentic. So there's like some sort of background flow being instantiated, which effectively starts looking more and more agentic, and even Sam Altman was referring to them kind of slowly reaching the sort of agentic level, or fast. We don't quite know when. And then UX, you have this kind of third way to look at things, and that's kind of really shaped by how we think at Valory and in the Olas ecosystem about how we should push forward the user experience. It's like, historically we have this in the web, this concept of viewing, right? Like I come to a site and I can basically just read it. And those were the first sites. Then Web 2, we all have these social media apps, where we start interacting with the product and actually feed data into it. Anna just talked about some of the challenges which arise, and Davide as well. But I think what also happens with a lot of conversation, be it in Web 3 or Web 2, is that we are actually very conditioned to think about building apps that involve interactions. So the kind of default mode when someone wants to build something is that they start with something which has a UI, and you are sort of somehow meant to click around on this UI and sort of have this really engaged process with this product. But not all valuable products are like that. So if you think about like some of the holy grails in the automotive industry, is like the sort of self-driving car, right? And the whole point there is that I stop interacting with the product as much as possible. I just sit into it, focus on something else, and then arrive. We obviously have these kind of products in the physical domain as well, like washing machines, microwave, and so on. And agents, in a way, are similar. So agents allow you to step back from interacting constantly, right? So it's not ChatGPT, you're not sitting there all the time typing into it. The idea is that you give it a high-level specification, then you go away, and you come back, and some valuable outcome has arrived for you. So in the context of this presentation, I specifically want to talk about these financial outcome generators, which move us from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think, meme to this sort of future where I can basically have my agent manage autonomously my DeFi portfolio without me having to be there all the time and without me even having to know it, but retaining ownership over all this. So quick background on me. I'm co-founder and CEO of Valory. I'm also founding member of Olas. My background is actually in economics. And our mission at Valory is to basically build co-owned AI, very related to user-owned AI, effectively the same, like allow people or groups of people to co-own AI systems, and we have a specific focus on doing that for agents. So for the rest of the talk, I'll briefly introduce Olas, the concept of agent economies, then give you an example of one which is live and buzzing, and then talk about this problem and the solution we've come up with. So Olas has, the entirety of agents on Olas have done more than 1.2 million transactions across 8 blockchains so far. And that's the current number of daily active agents, which is sort of our new hero metric, where we really kind of relating to this concept of daily active users. So behind each of these agents is one user every day uses this agent. Olas ultimately is about growing entire economies of such agents, where these agents deliver value to you as the end user, but in the background, in order to do so, they need to leverage other agents. And I'll explain it in a moment in more detail. On a technical level, we kind of enable different modes of deploying agents. So you can have like these sovereign agents, which are like basically personal agents. You run them on your device of your choosing. We have this version of decentralized agents, where you can run an agent as a distributed and decentralized network. And then the agent economies is effectively a composition of those two types into entire systems. You can also, all of you can get involved in Olas. There's sort of 6 roles you can take in the ecosystem. It's also all explained on the website, very straightforward. And I invite you to have a look there. So what is an agent economy? So one thing which often happens, and we heard it earlier in one of the panels, is when we talk about AI, we sort of jump ahead from where we are. So there's some things which AI in its current form enables that is new and exciting, but it doesn't mean that sort of any conceivable thing is possible or these things are all powerful, right? Like we often talk about this concept of AGI, artificial general intelligence, or people talk about it on X and elsewhere, but it's not here yet in the form in which most people would define it. And so what happens today is that if you build agents, they have to be very specialized in 1 or 2 roles. And so they're a mixture of these rules-based and learning-based systems. So they're not just sort of open-ended entities like ourselves with some goals and then they can do anything. No, they're like scoped to a specific use case context. And this means that very exciting things can be done still. We can basically build like higher level complexity by composing different types of agents that focus on different things, where the end result, the end product, is basically the outcome of these agents kind of trading and then eventually, or interacting in some form and eventually delivering some outcome to you, the end user. And all products on Olas take this form. And so the agents kind of communicate on and off chain, they trade on chain, that was the number I alluded to earlier, and ultimately get some useful stuff done, which is effectively the outcome of a long agent supply chain. So this is not theory, this is really live. I talked about the agent numbers. Almost all the transactions, or a large share of them, come from one very big use case, Olas Predict. I'll talk about this more later at the Agents Unleashed event, which follows straight after this. So I won't go into detail, but it's a live use case with hundreds of operators basically running agents in this use case. And there's 4 types of agents. They specialize in different areas. and the outcome then are these AI-based prediction markets. Now, we were thinking, can we create basically something similar in the context of DeFi and basically solve that user problem, which I showed you earlier. So basically put DeFi away, out of sight, but still give the user full control, right? So the user should be able to, if they want to, look into the gray box, but most of the time basically just outsource that to the agent. And so the way this concept works is that we have created an agent called Optimus, and you can read more about it on the launch blog post, which basically starts by continuous, well, this is a cycle, so it continuously does this, but it basically analyzes data on the blockchains it's configured for, currently the superchain ecosystem, so Base and Optimism, as well as Ethereum. It then has the ability to make transactions on all of those chains, so you, the user, don't have to know or engage even with those chains. You just engage with your agent. And crucially, it then has the opportunity to engage with the DeFi protocols which are deployed on those chains as a user, as an abstraction between you and those protocols. And then it delivers these outcomes for you autonomously. Now, currently it's very alpha. It's very early. We just kind of yesterday was the second part of the launch. But it's the right time to get involved. And here's how the system will look like, and is looking like. So you have, as a user, your Optimus agent, which you provide portfolio instructions in natural language. So at this point, it does look a bit like ChatGPT. So you're kind of putting in your definitions as to what outcomes you want in whatever language and in whatever way you can specify it. And then Optimus interprets them, kind of confirms with you that this is all right, and then it starts basically executing trades and activities which match these instructions. But in doing so, it relies on other agents to do that. So rather than it itself going out and collecting all the data and learning about everything itself, it leverages other agents to get stuff done. And that, therefore, again, takes this form of an agent economy. So your Optimus agent actually leverages other agents in the background, all coordinated by the Olas protocol, for you to arrive at your desirable outcomes, which is a growing portfolio of DeFi assets. So the novel three-step UX we intend is that you can ultimately run it in Perl. Here you see a UI of Perl currently for a different use case, the predict use case. But effectively, you can spin it up on your desktop, later mobile. You provided your user instructions, for instance, allocate my assets across blue-chip lending protocols on any Ethereum rollup, and then you sit back. So rather than then interacting and doing these steps, which I mentioned before, and kind of going through all of this, you really let the agent work. And the agent can work at this point for weeks, for months, whatever you want, right? That's what we're intending here. And what's interesting about this, and now the builders come into play, anyone who is building a DeFi protocol or anyone who is building agents already and wants to maybe also contribute to Olas, it creates a very interesting flywheel. So at the left here, we have basically where it starts. You, as a builder, contribute some software legals. This is a highly composable system. So you can, for instance, make one of the agents in the system better in a very lightweight way. We call them these MEC tools. They're agent tools, basically. And this immediately improves the capabilities of the overall system, because now the agents have access to more tools. A tool here can be something like a connector to like a new DeFi protocol. It can be something much more complex, like some sort of AI workflow where another type of agent architecture, maybe LangChain or PyAutoGen or whatever you came up with, utilizes some sort of open-ended learning algorithm to kind of suggest some action which then plugs back into Optimus. Better Optimus generally means that there's more operators, more users of Optimus, which I see we haven't updated this, shouldn't say prediction markets, which ultimately Yeah, this is, sorry, there's some non-updated parts here, but I'll walk you through it. So basically more operators for the Olas protocol also means that all these other agents which are being leveraged are now under more demand. It's one of the nice features of the Olas protocol is that you have these end users who are running these agents, and every operator you're adding on the end user side, like a user of Optimus or user of a prediction market agent, effectively creates extra demand on the infra agents, those who are in the background supplying, basically providing the supply chain. This happens here as well, and some of them help effectively for a healthy token economy of Olas. And this ultimately, via the dev rewards mechanism which Olas provides, which is explained in detail on our website, enables builders to directly benefit from contributing to the system. So again, if you're either a DeFi protocol or a builder in the space, our head of BD at Valory, who guides a lot of the ecosystem development, sits over here. Ralph, go talk to him. So how can you get involved today? Well, if you're very curious and also willing to help iron out bugs, you can test it. Go to this QR code, and there's the link to the agent, or I can also take you back to this QR code where the block explains it. And that was all I wanted to say today. Thank you. My name is David. You can follow me on X. And if you have any questions, bring them up now.
Hi. This might be a naive question, but I'm just trying to understand, and from your experience as you kind of build this out, the fees. So I'd imagine that you'd have multiple agent calls, and there'll be fees there. And as you're talking to other blockchains as well, there'll be fees there. And then I think at some point it becomes like a cost versus convenience kind of a thing. So how are you guys kind of thinking about it? And if you could share some examples as well, that would be pretty helpful.
Yeah, it's a great point. So there's kind of two parts here. Firstly, like the agent takes care of that, and so there is some sort of bells and whistles you can like configure around like your preferences there. Ultimately, the other interesting part there is that so for instance in the current version, it's on Optimus, Ethereum, and Base. You can I have to check the blog post myself, but I think you can onboard on either one of those three. Certainly that's the aim. And then it'll take care of it from there until you offboard. The other interesting thing is that in the background we have these infra agents which are supporting that. So one is the Mac, which provides signals, same as in Predict. Increasingly we find other infra agent needs like automation and relaying as these systems go cross-chain. So right now that's done in quite a ad hoc fashion, but there's like a concerted effort in the ecosystem to make that much more sort of plug and play, so that again, like there's different actually relay solutions and so on, which can just plug in and kind of take that input from some agent to get something executed. And then in this context, obviously a lot of bridging is involved, so you kind of also integrate bridge providers and so on. But again, the whole point is that agents, like your personal agent, is sort of to be thought of as your smart wallet, but rather you controlling that through every single interaction. You're giving it a very high-level instruction, and I'll go away and execute that. In the background, these agents then leverage other agents to get stuff done, and there you have that specialization.
So my question was around the cost of compute and the cost of doing transactions on chain. And I think what I was trying to understand was from your research, and as you guys have been implementing this, are there some examples that you can share on, you know, when you're making multi-agent calls, I'd imagine like there's some compute cost that you'd have to pay, and then you have to pay the blockchain cost as well across, say, multiple chains.
Yeah, so the example where that is much more evolved than in Optimus is in the Predict case. Same concept. I'll translate over. There, same problem. Like agents are making predictions about the future. That's actually outsourced. So agents also have to have algorithms around their anticipation about whether it's worth engaging in such predictions in the first place, whether it's worth using certain models. So that's, yeah, already in place. And we're actually using, shout out to Nevermind, which is a payment protocol, which actually facilitates doing this in a way so that it's actually like scalable as well. Because another issue you have is you don't want to make everything a micropayment, because then you also have like these issues of, you know, maybe a service provider reneging on the offer, and then like sort of how do you get that back? All right, thanks for having me.